business that lasts not for nearly 5 decades? For Margaret Hirsch, the answer isn't about products, profits, or expansion, it's about people. They started off in a tiny showroom in Durban with just 900 Rand in savings. Margaret and her husband Alan built Hirsch's into one of South Africa's most respected retail brands. Along the way, she's remained a passionate believer in learning, growth, and developing others. And today we're really exploring what happens when a leader commits to not only growing a business, but to growing the people who make that business possible. Welcome, Margaret. It's so lovely to see you again after
Thank you.
so many years after you've been on this podcast.
5 years ago, I was on your podcast last, so I'm very happy to
Amazing.
be back. Thank you for the invitation.
And so I remember you telling me the startup story. You said that you actually fell pregnant, lost your
Yeah.
job, and then you guys actually started Hirsch's home store. So was that with your eldest son, Richard? Was
Yes.
was he the first kid?
So we were married for 5 years before I got pregnant. And anybody who's ever wanted a baby knows I was desperate to have that baby. And when I told my boss I was pregnant, he said to me 2 words: "You're fired." And that was such a turning point in my life because I just thought nobody's ever going to have that power over me again. I'm never going to work for another boss as long as I live, and I never have. It was very, very difficult at that time because, to be pregnant and how am I going to live? How am I going to support myself? So the very next day I started my own business. In those days I was a shorthand typist. And it was the days before recordings and that type of thing. So my boss who didn't fire me, the big boss fired me. The other boss said, "Listen, I don't know who's going to do my work now that you're not there. But so I'll pay you. I'll bring the work in the morning and I would take it down in shorthand and I'd type it during the day and he'd come fetch it in the night. And in the night he would bring me some other work and I would type it in the night, he'd fetch it in the morning." So I started my own business doing that. And at the same time, my husband was working for a boss who didn't appreciate him. And Alan had such good ideas. And it was the days Alan J. Hellman started Game, Dion Friedlander started Dion's, discount stores were starting out. And Alan said to his boss, "Why don't you start discounting?" And his boss said to him, "Well, if you think you can do a better job than me, why don't you do it?" And we didn't know anything about business. Neither of us had ever done business at school. In fact, my husband had only ever passed standard 7. So, I mean, he had no clue about business or anything, but he just had the feeling that he could do this. So we went from having no children and 2 jobs to having 2 children and no jobs in the space of a year. And we had no fallback plan. We had no backup plan. People said, "What did you do?" We could only go forward. So we had 900 Rand, which was our joint severance pay, by the way. It was both of us. So we went to meet. He said, "I don't want to be a guy for, what we call the Bucky Brigade, where you've got your stuff in the back of your Bucky." He said, "I want to have a shop." So we got the shop in Umhlanga Drive, and that was 300 Rand a month was our rent. And then we had to put a sign up, and the blooming sign cost us 300 Rand. I never knew how expensive signs were. And the third 300 Rand went to our electricity deposit. And there was a few cents left over from that change that we bought our stationery. So we literally started with 0. We had no money and we had no backup because ours is a cross-cultural marriage. So neither of our parents supported us. So we had nowhere to go, but we had to make money from day one. And the first day, one of the chaps named Simon Makatini walked from the old place, which was down Broadway in Durban North, up to Umhlanga Drive and said, "Boss, I don't want to work here anymore. I want to work for you." And we said, "Well, we'd love you to work for us, but we just don't have money to pay you." He said, "That's okay. I'll just work anyway." So we knew that by the end of the week, because in those days the workers were weekly paid, we had to have enough money to pay Simon Makatini. Never about us. We had to buy food as well because we had 2 children. If you don't have a backup plan, you can only go forward. You have to work really hard to go forward. And it doesn't all happen at once, So Alan used to just service air conditioners in those days. He didn't do anything else, just service air conditioners. So we started luckily in February and we phoned and we phoned and we phoned. And the weather wasn't that hot at that time. But then a hot day struck and then everyone wanted the air conditioner service. So then we got some money in that we could pay the workers, we could buy food, and we could get through that month, and then we just had to get through the next month and then the next month, and so it went on. So yeah, it does start slowly, but it does build up. And when I teach entrepreneurs, I take a checkers board, the black and white checkers, 1 grain of rice on the first, 2 grains on the second block, 4 on the third block, 8 on the, and so you go, and that's how your business builds up over time, and it does take time.
So from the beginning, you actually had someone that actually liked your core values and vision and wanted to work for you. So you were an attractive employer from the beginning, even without having the funds. How important is core values in a leader to get staff that actually want to work with you, even in the long
Yeah.
run.
As an employer, the staff that I employ, I always say I employ for attitude. I can train skills, but I can't train attitude. You have to have a really good attitude if you want to do anything in life. It's all about attitude. So with us, we knew what we wanted. We were there to serve. My husband, he should have been a doctor because he's really like in the service industry. He just wants to help people and that. So that was his way. I was in the background those days, and I was bringing up children. So I did the books and I did the admin type of stuff. But he was out there, and he is a people's person. So he would go out. He would help these women. And then one would recommend to their sister, their uncle, and this one. And that's how it builds up slowly over time, where people will recommend you. So you have to do a good job, because they're not going to recommend you if you don't do a good job. You have to do a good job. Then they recommend you, and so the business grows.
So Hirsch's has always been well known for its excellences. And I know that you had a lot to do with that. And if you had to think back to that very tiny little showroom on Umhlanga Rocks Drive, was there any lessons about people and service that is still shaping Hirsch's today?
At Hirsch's, every customer is important. And now I'm not only serving my customers, I'm serving their children and their grandchildren today.
That is actually almost like that loyalty actually transpired into different generations of people coming back and actually seeing it's the same. Was it hard to when you guys were originally in one store and suddenly you branched out into others? How was it like to get that same level of
We were in the first shop for about 5 years, and then we opened in Verulam, which was not a success, so we had to close that shop. And that's what I say to people. Sometimes you make a mistake and you just have to stop and start again. It was the old days when Durban Town was Durban Town. So we went into Broad Street. We opened a branch in Broad Street. But we had good people. We've always had really good people who worked for us. So we left one person to run the Durban North store, and then we would go to Broad Street. And then we were offered a business called Nero and Gore, which was in Pinetown. So we went to Pinetown, and then we had good people in the other two branches who we trained, and then they went into the third store. It's a process of evolution. It takes really a lot of time to get it going and to train the people.
So it was literally almost like a cross-pollination of these excellent people that you had, and then you would take them over, and then they would train the others. And so it was almost like a culture that transferred from one store to the next. Yeah, I know that customer service and customer experience is really something that's really important for you as well at Hirsch's. And you've always said it happens long before they walk through the door.
I think you've just got to treat every customer like they're the only customer. You've got to treat them really, really well. You've got to look after them to the nth degree, and you've got to follow up to make sure that they're happy. Because how often have you been to a place where you're not happy and nobody bothered to ask you, so you just never went back there? So even today, we phone every customer that buys. We phone customers that we serve to the servicing, with their repairs. Are you happy with everything? Is everything okay?
Definitely. So that follow-up is so crucial. I know that for myself, what I experienced when I was at Hirsch Home Stores is the staff would be incredibly well trained. They would be almost like a product specialist of the specific vacuum cleaners, and they would be able to do a demonstration for you. And then you've always been passionate about entrepreneurship and specifically women empowerment.
In 1980, nobody knew what a microwave oven was. So the only way we could do it was to teach them how to use it. So I have cookery schools. So I had cookery schools for 17 years. And we taught in the cookery schools. At one stage, I had 5 cookery schools. I did 24 lessons a week. So, and that was really, really good. And that's when I started getting women together. And from there, I started to see that women were not happy in their homes. They weren't happy with themselves. They were capable of so much more than they were living. So after I closed the cookery schools, it was when Mandela came out and we didn't know what was going to happen. So I closed the cookery schools. I said, no, we've done this now. And that's when we started to empower our staff. So I took all my drivers and I sold them their vans really, really cheap. And I started them in their own businesses. So they would drive the trucks and their wife would do the books. And I did all of those. And today, all these years later, 4 of those businesses are still going. And then my technicians who would go and fix the things, I sold them their little buckies, and then we set them up in business with their wife doing the books. And they're still going today. It evolved over time, how we started to get the people, and we weren't greedy. Oh, we're going to have all this for ourselves. No, I'm going to set you up in your own business, and you can actually make your own money. And that's how it works. And it worked out very well. And then I started bringing women in, and I found that women didn't know how to run businesses. Nobody ever taught them. They were nail technicians, they were bakers, but they didn't know how to work the money out. So I started helping them with that. And from that, it grew to our networking. And in our networking, we get and they all help each other, because if we help each other to build each other up, that's how life works. Yeah.
So it's really like looking at the couple dynamics, actually each of them having a specific leadership role, and then from that entrepreneurship angle, they were then still in your business but as a separate business, but making their own money. Did it have an impact on their motivation?
They had the motivation to work harder. For me, the best bit was that I set them up and I set their wives up doing the books. So the family unit stayed together, which is, in this day and age, is so, so important. So the family unit stayed together. The wife did the books, the husband did the work. Everybody had money. There was food, there was school fees, a house was bought, the truck was paid for. It worked incredibly well. It was a fantastic system, and it still works to this day.
It's really the foundation of your business has always been, it's a family business, but you've actually taught others also how to have family businesses and actually have grown their entire household's income and even across generations. So let's get back to your own family business.
Well, I think, Richard went to Northwood and our Boys Highway, which is close to Umhlanga Rocks Drive. So he used to go and we used to walk up to work every afternoon to do his homework. And Lucy was a different kettle of fish. So she thrived in boarding school. She's very much a people's person. She didn't want to be at home and be at work and that. So she went to boarding school. She went to the Wickham Collegiate in Pietermaritzburg. And she had a fantastic upbringing. And she was a weekly boarder. So she'd be with us on weekends, but we would often work weekends. We would work the shows. We would, we had a lot of stuff to do. So she would help here and there. But Richard was at work literally every day from class 1 to matric. So he learned the business on the ground. And I'm a great believer in this. I believe that anybody who has a business should take their child and teach them business, because there's so much you can't learn at Harvard Business School about business. And, I always say, no matter what business you're in the people business. So you have to be able to handle people. And it shows you people when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're upset. You learn to handle people. So when my son matriculated, he went to England, as I had done. After I did matric, I went to England to work. And he went to England and he worked there for 4 years. He worked for an American company called The Gap, but it was in London. So he learned the American way and the English way. And he was in retail. So he learned retail. My daughter went to Sugar Bowl, California, and they did an assessment on her. And they said, you're absolutely perfect for retail. So she went into retail as well. And then when they came back, I said, well, what do you want to do? And they both said they wanted to come into the business. So it just worked out that way. But I did send them away first. Go see the world, see how other people work, see what other businesses do, try everything. They both did graphic design. My daughter was a trained beautician. They tried everything. They came into the business. And then they were settled. And I think by letting them go, they came back too. So if I'd have hung on to them, they would have wanted to do something else for their life. So, so I sent them out and then they did that. Then they came back, and they came back with new ideas, because everything changes, life changes so fast. They came back with new ideas, new concepts that change things. And now we've got my grandsons coming in who, of course, are so tech savvy. So the whole business will change again. Now with AI, we have to change. So everything's going to change so quickly. And it changes quickly. I was just yesterday, and my robot vacuum cleaner was vacuuming my flat, because I live in America. And I just thought, if you'd have told me 2 years ago that a robot would be vacuuming my house, I would have said, are you crazy? You've been reading too many books. And here I am. And the robot, we named it Robbie. Come on, Robbie, time to vacuum. And out he comes, and he vacuums the house, and he goes back to his little house and sits there. And you think about how life's changing. We have to change with it. And it's the children that will help us to change in time.
I found it extraordinary that you were allowing them to fly off, and then they came back, but then they actually reinvested in the business. And the fact that their world had become bigger, they actually came with those big ideas. You mentioned to me that you and your husband, I think, went to Disney for training. What was that about? And did that have an impact on how things worked at Hirsch's with the teams?
So, we started off, we thought, well, what can we do to improve? And for my 50th birthday, Ellen gave me a Tony Robbins course. So we came over to Miami and I trained with Tony Robbins, and it was life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. It was just so amazing. And then we thought, well, we came back, we brought all those ideas back. And then after a couple of years, we thought, well, what else are we going to do? And then we found out that Disney had its own university. So Disney's one of the biggest employers in the world. And everybody in Disney's got a smile on their face because it's a happy place to be. You have to be happy all the time. And we went to Disney, and that was also, it was such an eye-opener because the whole of Disney's built up. And underneath are all the works. So you see the rubbish bins, but you never see a rubbish bin truck coming because all the rubbish goes down and the rubbish bin trucks run underneath. There's a rubbish bin every 26 steps because in 26 steps, you'll carry your rubbish for 25 steps. So 26, you want to throw it. That's how, so everything was structured. Nothing happened by accident. You don't want to see Mickey Mouse going to the toilet, so you don't see any of that. But Disney had this huge, and it had different sections. So we obviously did retail, but there were people who did laundries, there were people who did hospitality, there were people who did all these different things, and Disney teaches you how to do it. So Disney University taught us, you see, we all wear very big name badges, so you can read our names. We copied that from Disney. We copied so much stuff from Disney that we still use to this day. And then from then on, we realized that we would have to, with the Japanese saying, kanai, constant, ever-ending improvement. We had to keep on improving ourselves. So every year we did a course, we did something to improve ourselves. And to this day, my son belongs to YPO, and he goes on all their courses, and he's completely transforming all the time. As you know, I'm a serial studier. So I started studying again when I was 60. I did a journalism degree, and then I did business. I did my honors, and I got my MBA when I was 70. And when I came here to America, I did my realtor's exam, and I'm now doing my broker's exam. So I'm still studying again at 76. I study every night to try and pass this flipping exam, which I've got to write this year. So yeah, we've always been studying. I love Robin Banks. I love the way he teaches. I love his attitude. So a lot of his stuff we teach in the classes. I do encourage all my staff to go to Robin. I encourage all my staff to join Toastmasters so that they can speak in public, because that's very important today. So we work with everybody to try and make them the best they can be. I don't force them, but I suggest to them, if you want to improve yourself, this is what I suggest you do. And then it's up to them. They make the best of their life that they can. We literally train every single day. So we start work at 10 to 8. We listen to motivational video for 10 minutes. At 8 o'clock, we take over. Ellen will speak, I will speak, Richard will speak. And then we give them each a chance to speak. So one will say why he's happy to come to work today. One will say what he's really proud of. One will give a motivation to the rest of the team to motivate them. So it's in our culture, and every single staff member has to attend those. And then the other thing we do is we sing. Because when you sing, your whole life lights up. So we sing wonderful things like Reach for the Stars, Millionaire Mind, all those type of songs, and they all know the words. And people do like to know the words and to be able to sing along. And in the beginning, they feel very shy, and afterwards they come out, and then they get over themselves, and then they open themselves up to be the best that they can be. And that's our goal at Hirsch, is to grow everybody to be the best that they can be.
It's so amazing. I was hoping you were going to mention the singing, because I remember that was something that you also said that came from Disney inspired. And I found something very interesting. So I uncovered in positive psychology, there's a thing called music therapy. And when I delved into it, and that's aligned with the singing that you do there, one of the techniques that they ask you to do, and I tried it out on this one team when I was doing a team transformation, and then suddenly everyone was so incredibly motivated. I was like, oh my goodness, this is really working. So what they said what people must do is get the entire team to bring their favorite songs. So I actually said to them, send me the YouTube link, and specifically what 30 seconds is the best part of the song for you. And often that would be the chorus or whatever. But what has been proven with neuroscience is it actually triggers positive things in your brain when you have that. And even if you're listening to someone else's best song, immediately that's what happens. So eventually everyone were tapping, dancing, singing, and I looked around the room and I was like, oh my goodness, this is having such a motivational impact. So I think the fact that you've been using very positive songs that has beats,
they've got to enjoy their work, and happy customers. If you have a miserable person, you know yourself, if you go in and the person behind the counter is miserable, you feel miserable. It's a horrible experience. Whereas if you go and the person behind the counter is happy and bubbly, you feel good as well. So I think it's so important to make sure that if your staff are happy, your customers are happy. And where does it starts with their training in the morning, because a lot of them come from very impoverished backgrounds. They come from out of a freezing cold shack in Joburg in the cold morning, all the way to work. Sometimes they get wet and they get there and they're cold and they're wet and they're miserable. And how do you turn that around so that they will come out as happy and positive to the person who comes into the store? And the only way to do that is to take care of them really well, to make sure that they are motivated in the morning, that they can get up and motivate other people, because you only learn by teaching others, as you well know. Yeah, from there, their whole attitude changes. It's changing the attitude. And I always say, you'll see there's a mat outside every Hirsch store. Wipe your feet on the mat, leave the shit from home behind, and come in with a smile on your face. And every morning, I get a picture of every single staff member smiling back at me. Yeah.
It's so funny. At our complex, when I took a photo when we moved in, I smiled. And now, if I get to the gate and I don't smile, it doesn't open for
It's
me.
a physiological benefit, because as you smile, these little muscles in the back pull up, it opens your pituitary gland, and all your little happy pulse run down your spine. So by doing that, you feel good all the time. Whereas otherwise, if you're a morbid look on your face, you feel morbid.
Yeah. So Margaret, I just want to ask you just a last few questions. So if someone had to join Hirsch tomorrow.
We got videos which they watch of all of us, a little bit about our history, because we've got amazing churches. One of my girls, I met her when she was living under the bridge by Christian de Beck. She had 3 little girls. She'd run away from her husband. She was in hiding because he said he was going to kill his second wife, so he was not joking. And she came to me and she left the 3 little girls sitting on the bridge, and she said, "Mrs. Hirsch, will you give me a job?" And I said, "What can you do?" And she said, "I have to be honest with you, I can't do anything, because I left school when I was 12. I've got 3 little children, and now I've run away from my husband who is going to kill me. And you have to help me." And so I did. And I brought her in, I taught her the computer, we looked after the children. And today she's one of my top managers. She's just incredible. And she's on one of my podcasts, and she'll tell the story where she had no money. She left her 3 little girls there. 5 o'clock in the morning, she would leave. She'd walk 2 hours to work all day, go home, 2 hours home, and feed the children and get their lunchboxes ready for the next day. And that's what she did for 3 years solidly, until she could get enough money to buy a car. So we have an amazing success story. So we tell the new staff some of the success stories we've had, where people have come in, they've had absolutely nothing, and now they've got beautiful homes, they've got motor cars, they've got investment properties. So I used to bring a lot of my stuff when I first went to Joburg, because I didn't know anybody in Joburg. I brought a lot of people up from Durban, and I put them on the bus, and they'd literally arrive with a checkers bag with 2 shirts and a pair of shoes in it. And today those people live in magnificent multi-million rand homes. They drive beautiful motor cars. Their kids are at private schools. And, when they see the change in people's lives and how we have, and I think that's what makes Hirsch different from other places of work, where other places of work, they take your skills, they sell them, and they give you some money, and they keep the change. That's how they make money. At Hirsch, we grow the people to be the best they can be. And that is my goal, to have everybody working for me being the best that they can possibly be every single day. And I always tell them the only person they compete with is themselves of yesterday. If they're better today than they were yesterday, they're a winner. I always say every family's got the one. I was the one in my family. I was the one who looked after everybody. I was the one who did everything for everybody. If anything went wrong or they came to me, I was the one. And I always say to the people who come to me, I want you to be the one in your family. I want you to be the one where they have Christmas lunch. I want you to be the one who can afford to buy the presents. I want you to be the one who can look after them when they get sick. You must be that person. And that's my goal, that everybody who works for me is the one of their family. Oh, yes.
So culture is really built in the small moments rather than the big initiatives.
So you have to lead by example. I can't say to the staff, "Come to work every day, but I'm going to lie at home in bed." I want you to be at work on time, but I'm going to arrive at 10 o'clock. I was always the first one there. I start work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And when I start 4 o'clock here in America, but because of the time difference, but I start 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm in South Africa. And I lead by example. I'm not sitting down doing nothing. I'm working all the time. If there's nothing to do, I will think of something to do. That how can I improve? What can I do to do better? And I'll do anything. I'll clean the toilets. I'll make the tea. I wipe the shelves, I pack the boxes. There's nothing that, and if there's no driver, I can drive a truck. I'll deliver your stuff. I never forget the one day I sent one of my staff in my brand new Mercedes to deliver a fridge gasket. That's a rubber that goes around your fridge, cost 30 Rand. And he had an accident in my Mercedes, which he wrote off. But with that 30 Rand gasket, I then got in my other car and I went and delivered the gasket to the woman so that she got her part. And then I took care of all the rest afterwards. So I think you've just got to, you've got to lead by example, and you have to be the one that they want to aspire to be. Where you lead, they will follow.
And that's kind of a principle that parents also live by with their kids, right? People are going to do what you do, not what you say. And if you say and what you do is the same. And from all your studies that you did with Tony Robbins and Robin Banks, was mindset something really important for you?
If you take control of your mind, you can do anything. And I've proved that so many times in my life where people said, that's what you're doing is impossible. I've taken control. I can do this. And I go out and I do it. And then they can see. So the next time I say, we can do this, they know that we can. Because if I didn't do it, they'd say, well, here she goes again, talking big, but she can't do anything. So, and even my managers, they've got to lead by example as well. And I say to them, you can't go and say to yourself, you've got to do these sales figures and you're sitting in your ass doing nothing. This doesn't work like that. You've got to go and you've got to show them how you do it. And that's it. People will see what you're doing. And then if you get to where they want to be, then they'll copy you. And as Robin Banks always says, you've got copyright. You have the right to copy anything that I do. You can copy anything that I do because what I do is right. Well, at Hirsch, we only ask for our staff for three things. We want honesty, integrity, and loyalty. So honesty is not negotiable. And again, you have to. Integrity is doing what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to phone the customer back, you phone the customer back. You don't tell somebody else to phone the customer back or not phone them back. And then loyalty, you've got to be loyal to your fellow workers. You've got to be loyal to your customers. You've got to be loyal to your suppliers. You've got to be loyal to yourself. So those are the three things that for us are not negotiable. Everything else we can negotiate, but those three things are definitely not negotiable.
This has been such an interesting discussion, Margaret. I mean, we've discussed how you started this business, how it really blew into an empire, how your kids grew in it, how they flew away, came back with insights, and now even how your grandson is going to be giving back with AI and bringing new, fresh things with different generations. And I think what I found to be interesting is the lessons you learned from Disney, Robin Banks, Tony Robbins. And really, I think what I found inspiring is your lifelong quest to keep on learning. And right now you're in California, but you are still writing exams. Last year you did your MBA. And I think what I really admire is the fact that you are still willing to do the ground level work. So if you go back in South Africa, you'll still be willing to pack the boxes, clean the showroom.
When you come to America, the big thing is that there's no maids here. Do everything, wash the floor, wash the bath, and then still get out and do the work that's got to be done.
And do the work that everyone else is doing.
I think that definitely keeps you humble. People say to me, why didn't you get somebody into it? I said, oh my gosh, I've got to pay them in dollars and I convert it to rands. That I can do it myself. I think you've got to just take control of yourself and know where you're going. I think the most important thing is to set your goals, to write them down, have a vision board, know where you're aiming. God's busy. There's 8 billion of us down here and only one of him up there. And if you ask, whatever you ask for, it's in the Bible, and if you ask, it'll be given. But you have to work towards it as well. It doesn't say ask and then sit down and wait for it to be thrown in your lap. It doesn't work like that. So you've got to put it out there. What are you wanting in life? And if you put it out there, you've got it on your vision board, you've got your list of goals, you read them every day, and you work towards them. And it's a very simple philosophy. And, if you keep on working towards, you will get there, because quitters never win and winners never quit. So you just keep going in the direction of your dreams, as Remy says, and you'll get there.
So inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. And really, I think seeing how you guys have also taken up modern technologies and even sharing those beautiful messages and the history of Hirsch, even via video. And I know that you are still interacting with the staff, even though you're in America in a different time zone. So they actually have access to so many generations of leadership. Just as a last thing before we go, did you and your husband strategically think about succession in terms of when you wanted to move out of the business? And besides for yourselves, how important is it if you had
we've been very fortunate because we've got wonderful people who work with us, who've worked with us for many, many years. I mean, Paul Lockett's been with us for 35 years, Norman's been with us for 32 years. So we have a lot of really good people who've worked with us for a long, long time.
How does that work?
For my succession plan, I had set it up a long time ago. But laws change. When I set up trust so that if Alan ever died, I would never be left and they would freeze the estate and then I'd have no money and have to pay everybody. So I set up trusts, which now are no good. And now we've had to change to PTY Limiteds. So it's something that also constantly evolves. But I had this vision in my head that I wanted my children to come into the business. And thank you, Lord, they did. Now I've got the vision that I want my grandchildren to come in, and I have this vision, which I tell them all the time, and they have to go out and find their own path in life. But my eldest grandson's becoming an attorney. He goes to Stellenbosch next year. My second grandson will do marketing. So, first of all, every good company needs an attorney. My second grandson will do marketing. Marketing is so important because you can have the best product at the best price, but if it's not marketed properly, nobody's going to buy it. So he's a very Mr. Congeniality type of person, so he'll do that. My third grandson, I'm hoping he'll take over my Samsung and Hisense stores, because we have the Samsung and Hisense stores as well. So I have a vision of him taking those over. My fourth grandson, Richard's eldest, is very, very clever. He gets over 90 something for maths. So he will take over as an accountant. And my fifth grandson, who looks exactly like my son, will take over from him as CEO. So that is my vision for the future. That is my vision. It's on my vision board. It's written my goals, and that's what I'm aiming for. Whether it will happen or not, I don't know, because I've got all those different personalities in the mix. But that's my plan going forward. And that was my succession plan, which I thought of from when those little boys were born. So that's my vision for them. And I'm really hoping it'll be their vision for them as well.
So exciting. So many gems and so many lessons. And Margaret, it's so lovely to regroup with you after so many years. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And thank you for really giving back to so many people in building businesses, but also with the knowledge and the passion of entrepreneurship and really empowering women and girls in the process.
And I never want anybody to be in the position where my mother was, where she didn't have any money, didn't have anything, and you had to struggle. And you don't want to, and you don't need to struggle. If you can work hard, and I always say, if you can sell, you'll never starve. But if you can work hard, you'll always go forward.
Thank you so much.